possibly, going to the nuclear option here, perhaps, we could compare it to a certain upsampling solution on PC, very famous, called DLSS, Deep Learning Super Sampling. So I did compare it briefly to the PC version with DLSS in performance mode at 1800p output, which is probably pretty close to where the console is at in terms of its typical resolution. I did high settings with RT on, which seemed roughly similar. Again, I'm not going to tell you that's the exact setting. I don't know, but it seems similar enough in my experience there. There's no granularity to the PC RT settings, though. It's literally an on-off toggle, which is hilarious. So I'd love to just turn off the RTGI here to make it match the PS5 Pro, but I can't. So you'll see a little bit of lighting pop in on PC. You're not going to see that on Pro. Lighting is going to look a little bit different here. I'm not going to belabor this too much because it should be pretty obvious to anyone that if it's not as good as FSR2 in this title, it should probably not be as good as DLSS, but it's a huge difference. The image is so much more stable, especially in foliage, but also in opaque geometry. You know, you're seeing less of that noise, less of that breakup, more detail there in stills. In motion, it's a huge difference as well. The image overall, very stable, very good looking, even at this more extreme upscale factor, I would say. With complex movement like these lightsaber swings here, DLSS is also doing a better job. It's so much more effectively keeping that image anti-aliased, whereas PSSR tends to break up and show us a lot of those raw edges in the resolve there. Okay. The only issue is that, kind of like with FSR2, DLSS is a little bit softer during movement. PSSR is sharper in that narrow respect during movement. You're not going to notice it too much, especially if you have motion blur, which I've turned off for this video here, but basically, you know, most people are going to have motion blur when they're playing. But in still shots, DLSS is resolving more detail. The last issue with DLSS possibly is that it does suffer some slightly similar issues with foliage and indirect lighting a little bit with reconstruction there, which you can kind of see in this Run of the Creek here. But it's a lot less prominent than with PSSR. And on the whole, the image quality, I would say, is very, very good with DLSS. Even 900p internal to 1800p output looks very, very good. But that's enough of my thoughts on it, because I have a genuine image quality expert with me.
Oh, thanks.
Alex Patel. So what are your kind of quick impressions of DLSS here?
I mean, this was one of the things that I really wanted for the game when it launched. I felt like the image quality on PC there was a disservice to what it could have been had the game included multiple scalers. And this was at this time when it was still not wholly common to release games with all the scalars in them, unlike where it is now, actually. So it was a great boon to image quality when it eventually was added in, and I did cover that partially in one of my update videos on this game, and I've always been pretty okay with it in this game. I know there's some frame generation issues in this game, but that is a whole other topic. In regards to how it compares to PSSR specifically here, watching your video, I feel like maybe with some of the first titles we saw where it was a lot higher res internally, especially, PSSR would acquit itself naturally better, because if the internal resolution is higher, the differences between scalars becomes actually much more proportionally smaller, and you start seeing actually macro differences in almost, I would call it, scaling style. So like the amount of aliasing or softness would be the core differentiating factors versus, you know, some other thing. The lower res you get, the amplification grows in terms of quality, stability, and all of these other things. And that's kind of what we're seeing here in your tests, specifically looking at the 1800p from what is a quarter res scale there, which is a huge scaler. Currently, it's not so surprising to me based on the things we've seen in other titles. And I think it maybe shows, one, that devs should not just blindly add PSSR to a game unless they really look at the subjective output and say this is a great win. Because if the current model cannot scale content from this low of a resolution and make it good, then they shouldn't add it, right? That would be the smart thing to do for players. But in this case, I almost feel like they didn't look at the output very well, because compared to DLSS is one thing, compared to FSR2, I think anyone should notice like rapidly pulsating visuals, right? Like, I don't think that is a good thing, and it's almost like a health warning thing. So yeah, I feel like at the moment PSSR probably pretty good at like 1400 40p and above, but at these lower resolutions, it's not in a good place really.